rather than Dr. Dylan Shanahan, because it's more big mouthful. Is that okay?
Yeah, that looks like
Thank
yes.
you. Okay, amazing. Thank you. We're just connecting. I'm going to have to put my glasses on. How are you, Kim? Oh, we're live.
Yay, we're
I
live.
just asked, how are you, Kim? You good?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited that this all came together. It's just a special day. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and obviously thank Dylan. It's just amazing for me. I was just saying before you joined, Kim, to Dylan and his mum Vicky. Everybody, I'm here with Dr. Dylan Shanahan, his mother Vicky, and Kimberly Warne. We're here to talk about Dylan's amazing memoir. Here it is. But I was just saying, Kim, before you came on, that reading the memoir had that same effect on me, like when I read a lot of all of Pema Chodron's work and any great teacher's master's work, because I felt like I could just, I read and my focus and concentration can kind of waver around a bit, but I had this feeling like the words, it was changing my cells. Do you know what I mean? Like it's working on so many levels because the meaning and intent is so absolutely pure, like no time wasting, it's just like, it's so embedded with consciousness and awareness.
I feel
And
the same way.
right.
And even earlier in when we were recording some of the work for the docuseries, Dylan would deliver these essays read by his device. And it was just always like, these bells would go off. So
Yeah.
I'm, thrilled.
Yeah, I could feel it in my cells and I could feel it washing through me and having an effect on my system and on my nervous system and on my consciousness and on everything, even if I made no effort at all, to understand or read or practice or whatever it was. And I think, maybe that's one of the great lessons of the book is to, in that sense, to make no effort, no trying, just to be with the work, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I really, for many reasons, and it's also, beautifully written. And there's some very profound and brilliant poetry in here, and it's teaching. So for all of these reasons, I asked if we could all get onto a conversation, and amazingly, you both said yes. So for those of you who don't know and aren't familiar with this, Dylan has written this memoir, The Liberation of Being, and I'm just going to read just a little bit of the back so you can get an understanding of who Dylan is. So Dr. Dylan Shanahan is a dual doctorate graduate in naturopathic and classical Chinese medicine from NUMN. Despite being diagnosed with ALS in 2018, he continued his studies with remarkable resilience, earning honorary doctorates in 2019. Dylan now shares his insights on the resilience of the human spirit through his writing, inspiring others with his journey.
I just want to note too, and my screen is small, but I think I see Dylan tearing up right now. So this is just so I'm going to start crying. It's what a beautiful thing to be honored for your life and your life's work, Dylan.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Kimberly, on that, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you met Dylan and how you came to champion his memoir, and a little bit about your relationship?
Yeah, it kind of, thanks to Dylan, I was putting my feelers out in 2019 for people that were living unfixed because I was unfixed myself and didn't know how the hell to do it. Dylan and I are in the same area, went to the same university. And so my first flyer looking for subjects for my film went to NUNM. And it wasn't Dylan that replied, but it was one of his classmates. And I sat down with her. And after 20 minutes, she said, I don't think you're supposed to work with me. You're supposed to work with Dylan. So I emailed him, and it wasn't even, there was no hesitation. Dylan was typing a lot more at that time. There was a lot more, but not typing with his fingers, but using eye movements. And Dylan, I remember you were just like, I think we've collaborated in a past life before, so let's do it again. You were like all in. And I think a month out, you were about to travel to Arizona for a best friend's wedding. You were getting on a plane with all of you were just so brave and courageous and just meeting life as it met you. And from there on, we were working together. The docuseries, of course, is edited. And so I had all these volumes of things he'd written that weren't in the docuseries. And I thought when we were chatting via text one day, why don't we just put this rest of this stuff in a book and include all your other work? And everything with Dylan just unfolds naturally. I think there's a lot of guidance happening in the unseen realms or something, because I think within 2 weeks we'd raised $25,000 on GoFundMe. I mean, it was like, I guess we're doing this. So it's been a ride, and just been so deeply honored to be touched by Dylan's life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much I want to say about it. I think one of the things that just strikes me again and again is my own base feelings of fear, and the thought of what, Dylan, what you're living through, and then to meet your words and your approach to it is just so like, because I know these things, all the things that you talk about. I know these things intellectually. I understand them, and I can talk about them, and I can see that they're absolutely right. But to live it, it's like, and I know I still don't live the thing that absolute being, and that absolute surrender that for all of us would benefit all of us. And there's a wonderful bit, I've just read it somewhere about I think, well, actually I'll read it at the end, but about attachment being the cause of suffering. And there's no question about it. I understand that intellectually and experientially 100%. And yet,
Eleanor, sorry to interrupt, but I want to mention too that while ALS, I think, heightened that journey for Dylan, and that's all I know of you, Dylan. But I had the privilege of meeting, interviewing 20 of his closest inner circle friends and family members. He's been like this from day one. Right. And that was really cool to learn as I interviewed these people, because here I was like, oh, ALS has been this great teacher. And yes, it has. But I think Dylan's been on this trajectory for a long time. And it was almost as if some part of his soul was like, yeah, now let me just whittle everything down and really get to the core of my life's purpose.
Yeah, and that became so clear to me, Dylan, reading the memoir, was that this is an absolute opportunity to become an enlightened being, full stop, end of. This is what's happening. And to hear that you say that, Kimberly, that was your experience of talking to friends of Dylan's before the ALS came. In that sense, it landed on the right shoulders. Can I say that? That's kind of like, wow, we're ready.
Yeah.
Shall we listen to Dylan read? We've got a pre-recording of Dylan reading a chapter from his memoir, and we'd really love to share that with all of you listening. So,
yes.
Do you want to set
that
up?
So I've got it queued up, and just to clarify, it's not Dylan's voice; it's his device. I don't have the privilege of knowing Dylan's voice, but here I'm gonna turn my microphone a little bit so that it's coming out of my computer. So here we go. This is in response to why his life matters.
Why am I here? Or why do I matter? Why am I here is surely an esoteric question with as many answers as there are perspectives to approach from. Then we might rule out the obvious reasons why I don't benefit society. Clearly, I am not here to be a surplus contributor to the economic growth of our GDP. Medicaid has provided me with incredibly expensive equipment, as well as the Department of Education canceling my enormous student loans to get through medical school because of my terminal illness disability. I can't work, and the state pays for my ongoing medical expenses, housing at a home for people on ventilators staffed with nurses, and my food. I would argue that it is not the purpose of any of us to be merely a cog in the wheel of the capitalistic machine. How can we begin to quantify the value of a life? Neither can I justify my existence on some grand productivity. Everything I do is slow. I'm like the horse wagon in the face of the steam train pulling in the Industrial Revolution. My mind might move at the speed of light, but my output is limited by my eyes and tablet interface. What was already a slow process of typing with my eyes has become even slower and laborious as I have developed problems with my eyes. Now I am not even on a horse, rather a mule. Further, there are many days that I am feverishly sick that I cannot muster the energy to do much of anything. Between these two factors I am only able to produce very tangible work. Therefore, it is futile for me to base my worth on what I can do, what I can produce, or what I can make. Again, I am an exaggeration of universal truths. Everyone's value is not dependent on what we can do or produce. It's inherent in who we are, in our being. I aspired to become an author, which I might still do, although the current reality of such slow typing makes writing something of that length hard to imagine. For now, it is reasonable to conclude that I will not benefit society by the books I will leave behind. What can I hope to physically give future generations? It would be something condensed with meaning and guidance, like a formula in word form, namely poetry. Again, we are speculating why I matter to others based on what I can do or make, which we have already established. Equating our worth based on what we can produce is fictional, the falsified materialization of the soul and spirit. It's so tempting. Who can resist? Of course, what we do is important and has value. If we overemphasize doing relative to being, then people with disabilities or chronic diseases that prevent us from doing much don't matter and are not of value. All people have implicit value, and I hope my life clarifies this as a human being and not as a human doer. Who am I? Why I matter is in my being. I'm in the process of experiencing that fully, but I can say that I am someone who has endured lifetimes of hardships. A few years ago, I was an able-bodied individual. It is almost impossible to imagine what I have gone through because it is so far removed from our experience. The loss of identity, social status was paramount. Those are transient parts of our external validation and ego. To persevere, the death of those opened new space in me for more authentic identification as a human spirit. This level of surrender through my life and disease process benefits us all. Much like the birthing process is one of the most extraneous, painful experiences, it's also the creation of life. Through my enduring of such humbling and painful experiences, I too am birthing life into the world, life of consciousness, spiritual emergence in our materialistic consumer culture like weeds growing up through cracks in the concrete. On a more practical level, I am, or hope to be, an example of contentment with living. Being alive is the supreme miracle. To be able to experience life in the full spectrum of its natural ebb and flow is the greatest gift. I try to keep that in mind every day. It helps me feel grateful for my existence, simply to be alive. I was down to about 15% of normal breath capacity over 2 years ago due to weakness in my diaphragm. I would probably not be alive today without the tracheostomy and all the expensive equipment I need to survive. So I feel like my life is a present from the love in the world. There are obviously a lot of problems in our country, but my life is an example that our society has roots of compassion. I would not be alive otherwise. There is an interdependence and symbiosis of life, especially human life. I've gone on quite a few hitchhiking trips in my day. One thing I enjoyed about hitchhiking is that it gives someone an opportunity to be kind, reminds us of our humanity. In a way, my life has become one major hitchhiking adventure, floating on the kindness of others. It is not the adventure I dreamed about years ago, but it is the one I am in. I've come to accept it and surrender to what is. I'm at peace with what is, and I am not trying to fight against it or let my mind desire and reach for changes to my circumstances. I'm not a victim of my circumstances. There is a path for all of us. Our choice is how we walk it. I'm passionate about the growth possible, not in spite of my situation, but because of it. I matter to the world because if I can be content with my life, be at peace with what is, I am helping to change the tide of the black hole in the heart of our discontent society, sucking the light from life. Life is resilient. We who live with uncurable challenging diseases tap into that resiliency, breathing it into the world. With great hardship comes an equivalent potential for spiritual growth. How would the world be affected by people being more content with their lives? What if we could appreciate the simple things in life? A sunset, the beauty of the changing seasons, a warm cup of tea with a friend, a meal with family, or a gentle breeze? That is what I offer the world, an appreciation with living and returning to the color of our purpose, spiritual growth. I have, now more than ever, the potential for growth and spiritual revelations because my life has been whittled down to the most essential elements. We are all a sack of vibrating particles held together with quantum strings. My soul's evolution plays a tone that resonates out on everyone's soul strings. Call it the collective consciousness or whatever, the purification and presence I bring to the spirit of my situation and circumstances influences humanity, rippling throughout eternity. My value approaches infinity as I approach the promised land, the spiritual spring of inner knowing. I am here.
I mean,
Yeah, what do you say?
we just take a moment. I mean, there are so many lines in there. Not only are they profound in their meaning, but they are so beautifully delivered. Like the profoundness is so beautifully delivered. Can I just pick out a few? I need to do this. I need to. So I am an exaggeration of universal truths. I mean, come on, Dylan, seriously, that is just, it's just like, oh my God, it's just like right on the money. And also literarily, it's just beautiful. Okay, there's this whole bit in the middle. Okay, I'm going to find it. Because I highlighted. Oh, here we go. I love this. We are all a sack of vibrating particles held together with quantum strings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the floating on the kindness of others, that his life has become one hitchhiking adventure. I mean, what a way to view dependency. It's a metaphor that will never leave me. And I know you have actually a question about it too, Eleanor.
Yeah, which we'll get to, but it really struck me. It really struck me when I read that for the first time, and then I read it again recently. And because I view the world as good. Was I reading somewhere? Was it in the memoir? Because I've been doing obviously lots of reading today. Was it Einstein? Somebody says, you decide, is the world a friendly place or not a friendly place?
Right. Yep.
And I instinctively, it's a friendly place. People are good. That's how I feel. And as a result, it's been my experience. Not always, you know what I mean? Obviously, this bad shit happens, but it's and so that line about the hitchhiking and about the going into hospital and you know, if Dylan felt that it wasn't a friendly place, what an absolutely paralyzingly with fear experience that would have been, and this would have been. But actually, to know that it is, and that human kindness is displayed again and again and again, it's just
a remarkable act of trust too, to be able to, you know, again, like you said, Eleanor, at the beginning, these are sort of things we think about and we believe them, but then to know that your life in that very moment depends on believing in kindness. That, like, this is life or death now, not just that's a really sweet thought. I'll carry that with me.
I'll have it on a little card.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And actually, I was thinking exactly that as we were listening. And it's an obvious thought. I don't know why it hadn't occurred to me before, but one of the reasons why, again, Dylan's teachings, and they are teachings, Dylan's teachings, for me, Dylan, they're so profound, is because, you know, and it's not to just, but, you know, you're not just a holy man sitting in a cave, right? Just telling us all we need to be more patient. Mm-hmm. You're actually showing.
Yes.
And
yes. And, you know, I'll even say emanating, because when I visit Dylan and there's Vicky in the background, Vicky shares the same energy every time I talk with you on the phone, Vicky. It's just so much love. But there are 4, I think, residents at Dylan's space, and you walk into Dylan's room and there are plants that are just bananas. They are so alive and vibrant and light everywhere, and the energy feels like I never want to leave there. It feels like a spa. And no judgment on the other spaces, but there's just not that same, it feels more like a place to die. And Dylan's room feels like a place to live, and it has not changed. I mean, it's been a while since I've been with you, Dylan, but not that long, and it just keeps getting brighter.
And I think that, because that's another truth that is just borne out again and again in the memoir about where choice does lie. And I think there's a line Dylan says, pain is pain, but suffering is choice. And that, as you describe Dylan's room, Dylan, as Kimberly describes your room, I can feel it. I can feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another bit before we leave the reading. There's another bit, and I'm just trying to find it, but it's this great line about the discontent that we're living in.
I can paraphrase it, because I've read it so many times, around being an example of contentedness with life, and what could be more beautiful than offering that to the heart of discontent in our society.
Oh, here, yeah, exactly. Here it is.
Now you can say it better.
Well, it's just this. It's the way that you phrase it, Dylan. I'm helping to change the tide of the black hole in the heart of our discontent society.
Yes. I mean, if anyone questions their value by what they produce and what they, you know, are doing in the productivity model of the world, listen to that quote and know that you can make that choice in your heart and make profound changes in the heart of the cosmos, I believe.
That was another thing that occurred to me as we were listening, because I'm sure we all experience, in terms of our relationship with the political world and the environmental world, a sense of overwhelm, a sense of smallness, a sense of what can I do, and but the fact is, and it is a fact, to live with that lightness of being and to practice that lightness of being every day, or as much as we can with what resources we have to hand, is a huge, exactly as Dylan is doing, is this huge impact and gift on the structure of this universe, and therefore to every single one of us and ourselves. And that's what the place I always arrive at, actually, when I feel overwhelmed, or I feel like I don't want to go out on the street and demonstrate or write to my MP or do any of those things which are apparently the doing things, like this will do the thing, you know what I mean, when I just want to sit quietly, and that impact. And in fact, this entire chapter, Why We Matter. I mean, I hope everybody listening, I hope you all buy the memoir, and I hope you sit and read, and that, because I mean, all of the chapters are brilliant actually, but the Why We Matter one, I mean, it's relatable on every level. Certainly I relate to it, you know, that idea of value. And I always feel like I'm having to fight for my right to be here. And I know that's a product of messaging and not the truth.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to have it reiterated and put so eloquently and beautifully, and coming from a person of real experience and great intellect, who knows exactly what you're talking about, Dylan, is triple impactful. So I want to thank you for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Because, you know, as well, I was thinking as I was listening to it, there's no doubt that sense, I don't matter, is at the heart of so much suffering and warfare, right? So much suffering. I don't matter, so I'm going to amass a fucking great army on the border and invade because I don't matter.
Yeah, we've got it all wrong in our society. The mattering is so superficial and unachievable for 99% of us in what we measure this worth with. We need more teachers like you, Dylan, to demonstrate that inherent goodness and how that leaves a lasting impact on the fabric of the universe.
Absolutely, and more elevation of the voices who are living it, like as Dylan is living it, so that modeling and blueprint and guidance is there, and the loudest voices are not what they are right now. And I won't bring their names into this conversation, but you know, because that's the modeling right now, and we need the modeling that Dylan is leading in.
You might enjoy, Eleanor, I have 20 in that response to that question, why we matter. 20 individuals from the Unfixed series. They're all 1-minute snippets of them talking about why their lives matter. And they're all a little bit different, but individuals with chronic illness. And so that was kind of the angle. But you would be surprised at how many people approached it with variations on a similar theme, but also very vastly different. So it's something that has been stirring with me, especially within the chronic illness community, because we are, you know, the dregs of society in terms of what we can produce.
And so how would you, if the question was put to you, Kimberly, how would you answer it?
For me, it's similar to Dylan. I love my quiet life. I love connecting with human beings, but the vibration that's cultivated just through a sense of peace within the storm, which has been my lesson within my own body. I live with a constant sensation of turmoil in my physical experience. And so to constantly allow that and find the calm within it is my daily practice. And to just go, this is, and this too, and this too. And to know that the experience of peace and stillness are being, are expanding into the chaos and the storminess. That feels like something that is valuable in this world, to know cellularly. Yeah. To know that they can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots of questions which we've got for Dylan, which I'd kind of love you to answer as well, Kimberly. So if there are some that you'd like to answer at the same time, or, you know, you're going to read Dylan's answers. So we've sent everyone who's listening, we've sent Dylan questions in advance, and he's very kindly really expanded and developed them. And then I'm going to ask them, and then Kim is going to read them, the answers on Dylan's behalf.
And I'm going to make sure too, Vicki, because my eyesight is so bad, even with these glasses on, I'm going to try so hard to see Dylan's eyes and make sure I'm getting the right yes or no here. But if I do say something incorrectly, Vicki, can you help me? Okay.
Okay. So, Dylan, my first question to you was, have you developed other abilities as your physical faculties have reduced?
That looks like a yes. And I'll pull something. A lot of this is pulled directly from his book. He goes on to say, as my body has weakened, other senses have sharpened. The capacity to hold what can only be called a non-dual perception, life and death together, seen as two poles of one reality, has deepened. It's a fierce tenderness, a presence beyond physical movement. I live on the razor's edge between life and death, holding both as two poles of one reality.
I mean, that's just beyond fascinating, isn't it? I mean, to me, it's like just to hold those as one, that's just like when I try and extend myself into imagining what Dylan has just described, it's like taking acid.
Yeah, totally.
It's wild. And it kind of
yeah, I mean, your question was, are there other abilities or what senses have sharpened? But I don't even know, do we have a name for that sense?
I don't know, but it is, as you describe it, and as I hear your answer, Dylan, it sounds like a heightened sense of perception that is literally allowed to do something which, for those of us who are still, much more governed by a kind of material duality of our physical self and all the stuff that you describe having to let go of, those first few layers that you simply have to let go of, which get in the way of our perception of what you're perceiving. And certainly when and there is a psychedelics question and we'll get to that, but certainly for all of us here probably have done this, when you do take psychedelics, you leave all this behind. This is like
the curtains lifted, and suddenly,
boy, do they ever. Got a question on that, but it's near the end, so let's go to the next one. So my next question, Dylan, because I'm listening to telepathy tapes, my friend Chloe sent them to me, I sent them to Kimberly, and I wondered if you were listening to the telepathy tapes.
No. I see Vicky shaking. Is that a no, Vicky? Okay, yes to no. No. Although, Dylan, I think I sent you a link to it like months and months ago. I highly recommend it because we're all going bananas over it through here. However,
we'll meet you on the hill.
Yeah, I have a suspicion because there is a place on the telepathy tapes that a lot of these mute and autistic children are telepathically meeting at, and they call it the Hill. And boy, do I wonder sometimes, Dylan, if you're meeting them there. I really would like to know.
Me too, and I would like to know.
Yeah. But Dylan does have an expansion on that answer. He says, throughout my life, I've explored many channels of communication beyond the physical, intuitive, energetic, and even poetic ones. Listening deeply, even without words, feels natural to me now. And this actually, I remember we had an episode on intimacy, and Dylan talked about how important that listening has become, and how this almost kinesthetic vibration of connection and communication is happening with his friends. They'll put their hand on his shoulder, and he can reach out with his energy to share with them. So, yes.
Yeah, and I think that was why those two questions came one after the other, because that was kind of my curiosity was really all around that. Yeah, like that, whether it's completely new faculties discovered as other ones have reduced, or whether that heightened where you're more able to literally manipulate and move your energy around and reach out. And it's really, really beautiful to hear. It sounds to me like a fine tuning,
Well, and I think Dylan would also give a nod to, I'm forgetting her name now, that I interviewed. She's his Qigong mentor, and she was from NUNM. And back when Dylan was training to have his own Qigong studio, and he an Aikido master, and all of that, fully functioning with his body, you were already excelling with Qigong and Aikido. But he's continued the Qigong to this day. And she comes and visits him, and they do all of the exercises, but just by moving energy with
Wow.
his mind through his body. So I would imagine it's become quite powerful in there.
I would imagine that's absolutely wild.
Yeah.
If we get a chance to speak again, I would love to hear more about that,
Mm-hmm.
Dylan, because that sounds absolutely extraordinary. And
Tamara
also,
Stout. That's her name.
yeah,
Nod
and
to
also,
Tamara Stout.
say her name again.
Tamara Stout.
Okay. It also sounds kind of logical in terms, because what little I know, it's an energetic practice, right? And the body is the last leaf on the tree in terms of what's happening. So it would kind of make sense that if the body then reduced its capacity, that the central core of it would expand anyway, right?
Absolutely.
Wild. Yeah, I imagine the work that Dylan is doing, like we can't see it, but that it's out like here, like doing, that's what I imagine.
Yeah.
Wild.
Boy, I wish there was a device, Dylan, that, I mean, it was 3 years ago that you were like, maybe I only have 6 months left. And then you knew that you wanted to stick around for Dune 1, the premiere of the movie to come out. And 3 years later, so now I'm thinking you might just be here for another 50 years. And by then, we will have the technology for you to be able to tell us what this experience is internally.
This would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question, and actually I was afraid to ask this, but I asked it anyway. Are you afraid?
I see yes. Vicki, am I right about that?
Yes.
Or no? Is it? Dylan, are you afraid?
Looks like no to me.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So, Dylan's answer here. For me, in my conscious self, I am not afraid of the cessation of my body or death. The language of dying doesn't align with my beliefs around that transition. So I tend to use words like passing, not away, though, because conservation of energy, where energy can neither be created nor destroyed, is true for life as well as death. For me, passing is a returning home to a non-local, atemporal realm of spirit that is superimposed with our physical reality, but only accessible to the highly evolved spiritual masters, or through passing over when the body can no longer contain the spirit. What a beautiful process to have the veils of our warped perspectives overly attached to the physical reality cleared away. Like returning from a dreary land with constant cloud cover, and behold, we are reacquainted with the warmth and brightness of the sun. So I am definitely not concerned with a prognosis suggesting that I will pass sooner than later. Although what my prognosis says about how I will cease my physiology brings up some red flags. Eventually, the muscles of breathing will become insufficient. I will likely suffocate or get pneumonia and not be able to clear the fluid in my lungs and suffocate. One way or another, it is likely to be through suffocation that I will have to transition from this body. Recently, my saliva keeps going down the wrong pipe, saliva aspiration, because my swallowing is ineffective due to muscle weakness in my throat. Normal people just cough it up, no problem, but because I have such limited breath capacity, it is problematic for me. Since I am too weak to cough it up, it stays longer, festers, causes my lungs to secrete music to decontaminate it until it eventually obstructs my airways. I have a lot of practice with micro suffocations. I would like to say that I am more at peace with the projected progression outcome of ALS, maybe a little bit, but ultimately it seems that passing by suffocation is a serious challenge to maintain a peaceful state of mind through. It is a rather violent tearing of one from the breath of life. I still have time to train in equanimity. Through my practice, I aspire to grow into my spirit, such that even those strong cries of my body and survival instincts will be just leaves dropping on the ocean of my eternal self. So full of love, there will be no room to fear. It has always been my life goal to reach that state, but now it is just a higher priority. So that's a doozy to swallow. And I'll preface, this was written, Dylan, I think probably 2 years ago. So you've had lots of practice in micro-suffocation since then. And I would wish I could hear how that's changed for you now. Do you, can I ask, do you still fear suffocation?
Yeah.
No. Is it yes? Yes. So
No.
that
now I'm seeing
no. No. Yeah, so that's been a couple of years of practicing this, like he said, the strong cries of my body. And how do we, that's like basically undoing hundreds of thousands of years of evolution.
Yeah.
To tell your body to not freak out when you're suffocating.
Yeah. An almost impossible task. Like, it would be okay if that task wasn't possible, because it's literally, hundreds of millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years exactly of our body's evolution. It's like, it's I don't know how that is undone, but clearly in the last 2 years, that practice, again, this is what's being shown, which is remarkable. And I would love to know the doorway that he has found into the room where he's able to do that. That's completely phenomenal. And the other thing I felt listening to your answer, Dylan, was how really grateful for being allowed to be up close and listening to someone willing to talk very clearly about death in its structural and physical form. Like, this is what's going to happen to me. That's an amazing, to be allowed to be up close and listen to somebody say that. It's kind of amazing to me. Like, I want to thank you for that, because I've been up close and personal to all kinds of death and all its kind of variants. And I'm familiar with all the grief and the fear and there's all those bits. I'm familiar with those, but that language just around talking about it like that, I'm not. It's not something I've been allowed to be around before.
Well, and I don't think a lot of people want to go there, even if they know how their final moments might look. I don't think they want. I think Dylan is unusual in that he constantly turns toward any sort of friction that his life circumstances are offering him, so that he can ultimately, like he says, meet it with so much love that it just leaves dropping on an ocean.
Yeah, and which I fully believe is possible, not only because it's Dylan, but because also if one can conceive of it, it's possible, right? And here he is actually doing it.
I would say, I'm not claiming to be anywhere near Dylan, but I would agree with him that love, when you asked what is that portal, my experience, the only way I've been able to find peace within this constant sensation of movement is also to turn towards it with love. It is the only way. And even it's sneaky, because even if I turn towards it with love, conditional that it goes away, I'll love you because I'm trying to make this all better for me, that doesn't even work. It has to be completely unconditional. Give it all to me right now, and I'm okay with it. And then there's some sort of stillness that rises up in that.
And is that for you, Kimberly? Have you achieved that? And and do you sustain, and so, okay, the next question, do you sustain it or does it come and go? Is it a practice? Is it like keeping a ball in there? You've got to keep doing all the time, or do you reach a place where you can plain sail with it?
It's been 10 years. So the first, I would say, I mean, it didn't even occur to me until probably like year 5. But the first couple of years, it was more of like a daily practice. I'd wake up and I'd go, oh, fuck, here it is again. Here it is again. Here it is again. And then now it's much more just an automatic, it's almost like a cellular relaxation that allows for both, that knows that both can exist. So yeah, it's not a practice for me as much anymore. I will on the really, really severe days, it still comes up, but mostly not.
Okay, so it's the allowing for everything to be in the room at once. That's okay.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's love which powers that allowance.
100%. And the unconditional love, like that kind of love, nothing
Not
below
the
that.
trying to get you love. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Dylan, have you seen God?
That's a no. Right? That's a no. However, God is not so much seen as felt. And this is sort of paraphrased from his book and a lot of his poetry. In the hush of the forest, in the sway of the trees, in the breath between things, when I lie beneath the canopy of giants, there is no doubt that God is everywhere. I am not a Christian, but I get a lot of inspiration from the stories of Jesus as the full embodiment of compassion and love. Love for humanity and love for whatever word you use for the source of it all. Call it the creator, the Tao, Great Spirit, God, Allah. I don't think it matters. But the reverence of the sacred and love for this gift of life makes all the difference to me. It has been able to bring light into even a situation as challenging as mine. The sun is always shining above the clouds. So in, a much more embodied experience, I would interpret that as not seeing God, but knowing God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think as well about, do you know Robert Faulkner's book, The Others Within Us?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he talks about the horrific trauma that he experienced, but he knew, or he learned, that the self is pristine. So there was always the pristine self, which simply was not harmed.
Yep. The sun above the clouds.
Right. And
Yeah.
I've learned to that a lot recently. I'm a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And so that really struck me as well in terms of trauma and recovery from it and the pristine self. Yeah.
Wow.
When I talk about it, my brain goes completely blank and I can't remember what we're talking about.
Well, so I just finished Sophie Strand's book, The Body is a Doorway. And she also, is in this process of working with early childhood sexual trauma, but has leaned into more of what she calls humble mentorship with the more than human world. And that sense of wholeness is understanding that the ecosystem of herself is not, it's a doorway. It's not a wall, and that universe is so much wider, and that healing is so much wider, and that also her wound, the early wound, is an invitation to that risky collaboration that might not have otherwise been opened because of the early trauma. So she's sort of rewiring it as an invitation to collaborate with the rest of the world and find wholeness there.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that when I began work on it, I found some amazing, like incredible support and guidance and brilliant professionals who I've worked with for the past kind of 5 years. And that's been one of the things around. I read something, and again, I think it's in the memoir, Dylan, about the crack where the trauma, or the crack that the trauma creates, and then not confusing that with the spiritual lessons that rush in through that.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, that's a brilliant way to put it, because that allows me to put the two things in the same room. Again, I think we just keep returning to this, and I think this is one of the most fundamentally useful things that I take away from this conversation. Actually, is holding everything in the same room.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Question 5, Dylan: is death your friend?
That looks like a yes to me.
Yes.
Oh, is that a yes, Vicki? Every time
Yeah.
it is a yes. Okay. Death is no longer an enemy to me. This is from his book. It is a threshold, a return. As I wrote, there's always a return, or the sickness takes you to the ultimate return. Death feels less like an end and more like a coming home. It is a threshold. The sickness that strips me down also prepares me. I do not walk toward death in fear, but as a traveler returning to a home I've never left, only forgotten. Death is not a failure. It is the soft closing of a chapter. It is the river bending back towards the sea. It is surrender, not defeat. It is coming home.
Love that.
Yeah.
And Dylan: is life your friend?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love it when I see Dylan's tears. There's just sort of this, they come up from such a big place, Dylan, you fill a room, and we're on a little screen here, and you're just filling my room here. So yes, life is friend. He writes, even amidst decline, life keeps revealing itself to me. In the smallest breath, the quiet sway of a tree, the unexpected kindness of a stranger, life has become less about striving and more about listening. There is no part too small to be sacred. Each moment offers its own wholeness if we are willing to meet it.
I love that. There is no part too small to be sacred.
Yeah. Yeah, we go all over the world looking for that sacred, don't we? And
Right.
and it's like Dylan is, well, he could have said, well, screw it. I guess I'm not going to meet all of that in my life, but he's gone, no, I'm going to find the sacred.
Yeah.
And it's going to be right here. I'm going to cultivate it.
Yeah. It's that choice which is so remarkable and so generous.
Yeah.
It's an incredibly generous choice to have made. Before we go on, I just want to check in with Dylan and you, Kimberly. We're definitely going to go way over the hour. Is everyone okay? We've already been on for an hour. Is everyone happy to just keep going?
I'm okay. I want to check because Dylan sometimes has to have an aide come in and clear his pipes. So what do you think, Dylan?
He's good.
Okay.
Doesn't need a suction.
Okay, great.
Okay, so just let me know. Let's just keep going. And then if there's a moment when it's just like, okay, enough now, just let me know.
Okay.
Okay. So, yeah, I asked this question because of that line, I am an exaggeration of universal truth. So my question is, Dylan, is there a funny side to your experience?
That looks like yes.
Okay,
yes.
good.
Dylan wrote a great essay about food. a couple years ago, and it was hilarious to hear him talk about the different stages. He even named them, like there was the bacon phase and then there was the burrito phase, because
Right.
as different parts of his body were losing their muscle contraction, he had to find ways to get food into his mouth. It's delightful. But so I even suspected then, and even throughout the book, there's a lot of humor in there.
Yeah.
Dylan has a great perspective on everything. And he says there's an absurdity in the extremity of my situation. The universe seems to have said, let's exaggerate all of existence into one fragile human body.
So it's like, really?
Ta-da! Bring it on. So yes, he says there is deep humor in how serious we think life is and how beautifully silly it can be.
Yeah. Okay. That's really great to hear. Okay. Dylan, you wrote a lot of poetry. It's very beautiful. So, and you touched on, again, actually in that chapter, you read out Why We Matter, or was it somewhere? I've read so much today, I can't remember where it was. But anyway, just that poetry, because it's so stripped down, you can get to the truth real sharp. So I just wanted to ask, is poetry why you choose as a medium? Do you choose poetry as a medium because there's nowhere to hide?
Yes. He says yes, and poetry leaves no refuge for the false self. It forces you it forces you into living truthfully. It demands honesty. In poetry, I can't dress up the truth. I must simply stand before it, naked, and let the words rise like breath from the heart. Living a lie is dying each day. Surely all life is dying, but the rate of decay is a choice of way. So he wrote his first poem at 12 and then filled journals throughout the years with his poetry. And a lot of the poetry in this book, well, I would say maybe half, was written post ALS, and then the other half was written from his younger years. So for him, he says it was my purest expression.
Yeah.
And he would like me to read one of his poems. So I'm going to read it. It's, if anyone wants to follow along, it's chapter 113, page 113. It's called Rumi Meets Huang Di, Inspiring Meditations. Tilting our inner, God, I really need new glasses, guys. Tilting our inner ear to the fire, resonating out both ends of the candle's light, within, without, and all about. Listening for the guiding light of truth in all its totality. On that day, how easily excited it will be to rise from slumber, maybe even being inclined to help the sun were our place not to rise together. How joyous the moment will be when that outward-looking fire of awareness reunites with that inner longing of water's resting place, on inward reflecting pools of desire to be whole. What voice do you use to talk to such a one? What title would you use to reference it, if every day could be one with the beloved? Would that change your tone or color of the day? For in the sun rays would not only be the warming of skin, but also the guiding vector back within. How long can you hold the light of attention to burn through, to where the fire meets the other side of the waxed tunnel? Now is the time to come home to our inner source, where looked and looker meet. One eye, spelled EYE, /I, for both, and beloved, and both for my beloved. One I for both. I love that. Yeah. So a little.
Dylan, are you reciting poetry? Do you recite it in your head? Like, is that happening, or is there things? Is it happening? This isn't one of the questions. I just really wondered.
Does it? Yes. He said yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How beautiful, and how
Yeah.
unlucky are we that we don't get to hear it.
Hear it. I know. I'm going to develop the machine.
I'd like to
I
chime
know.
in here.
I'm not very technically minded, but I'm going to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
I'd like to chime in here about a few years ago. Dylan asked me to find his journals, and I found them, and it was a project, a really fun project for us to work on. When I would come once a week, I scan the journal, email it to him, and then he'd tell me which pages to copy, and then we'd put a poem up, and fix the punctuation, and there'd be like this one poem, Resurrection of Fall. It says, "Chrisman colors of autumn like the flames of purgatory." Here's the line I just, "Stripping us down to the bare, naked branches of youth." And I went, oh, Dylan. Now that line,
Yeah.
Mm.
it was really fun for us.
Yeah.
Share
And
that.
fun for you too, because I'd imagine he wasn't sharing those journals, Vicki, with you when he was younger. So, oh, looks like she's got to attend to something.
Okay. Well, the next one is related.
Okay.
Dylan, did poetry choose you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. In many ways, poetry was a lifeline long before I needed one. I often wrote before I understood why, as if the words themselves were carrying me towards healing before I knew I needed it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with Shona Alexia the other day here Dylan, he's a poet, and because I just wanted to understand poets better, because I'm not a poet, I'm a novelist. I have written poetry. In fact, I wrote my first poem when I was 12, and I do have some, but I always feel like poets kind of sit at the top table in terms of that connection with God. Like that, the poetry just comes straight from God, whatever God is, for me, because it is so pure and so extraordinary. Can I ask you a question that's not, do you think of yourself as a poet? Are you a poet, Dylan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think poets breathe rarefied air. There's something extraordinary about them.
Yeah. And, when we were putting Dylan's book together, there was the early discussion of like, maybe, it's just the essays and the interviews. And is it too much to add the poetry? And Dylan was just adamant. And I'm so glad you were, Dylan, because this was the essence and the through line, really, that holds your entire journey together. So I think he knew that all along.
Yeah, I think you were absolutely right, Dylan. I think actually the entire balance of the book, because it's got essays and letters and diary entries or your prose, and then the poetry. Yeah, it balances it really beautifully, and it means we get all these multiple perspectives, not just from different people in your life, but from you. Because as a poet, you're delivering a perspective that you're not delivering when you're delivering prose pieces.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it also even shows the trajectory of ALS, because as you notice, some of the poems get sparse, more and more sparse as it gets more and more challenging for him to use, for you, Dylan, to move your eyes. So in a way, it's almost like your body and the disease process was also shaping the poetry and refining, asking you to meet it with such integrity of each word, because each word counts. I mean, I would watch him type, and Dylan, I mean, I don't know where you're at now, but it would take sometimes a half an hour to type a sentence.
right.
So each
you better
sentence
choose your
counts.
word. Yeah. And it felt as well, the later poems feel like, such, again, like a direct, so Dylan, like it feels like you're talking directly out and sometimes asking difficult questions. And some of them are, that I can hear the upset and the fury and the feeling in there and that, and they feel such like everything is stripped away and you've got an absolute straight line to God. Again, I use that word loosely. I don't know why. I have this thing, like, I am absolutely not a Christian, but I think just because of my material conditioning, God just does. I've tried so many other words, but the truth of it is that's the one that just sits real easy. So I hold it like, okay, because I know exactly what it means to me. I just wish it didn't have all the connotations of all the other stuff. Anyway, that was a side, but it feels like that. So yeah, it feels like there's a complete strip away, Dylan, and you're just talking right to God, the universe, the great blue yonder, the south, the hill, and it's really powerful. And I could feel that in those poems.
I love, Ashley just wrote in, I want to comment on this because I love this too, Ashley. She says, I see him smiling when you read the poetry. And it's true, even though that, you know, Dylan, your facial muscles are largely disappeared. I love that you get this, there's this one little place right here that still gets to smile. And it's so precious. Yeah.
I was smiling too. So I think we're on, yes. Okay, this is question 10, Dylan. Do people with disabilities and chronic illnesses contact you for advice?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. He says we share a common language of resilience and vulnerability. It is not so much about advice as it is about being witnessed, seen not in spite of, but through the experiences that shape us. And this is grabbed from a former essay. He says, I think about the root cause of disease and suffering to be interlinked. As the Buddha taught that the root of suffering is the ignorance of self, we are all unfixed while we still experience the world through the veils of our illusions. Maybe if some in the unfixed community had instead received a diagnosis that can be treated or pharmaceutically controlled, we might have gone back to sleep in the life patterns and the attitudes, the habits, the relationships that were contributing or even causing the symptoms that presented in the first place. To me, we are all unfixed while we still don't have unconditional love for our own unique brilliance. We are unfixed while we can't see the inherent value and feel the familial compassion for everyone we pass on the street. We are unfixed until the beauty of the natural world would hurt to not have it close and enveloping us. We are unfixed while we are unaware of our bodies being ripe with the rivers of stardust and our soul an outpouring from the hand of the divine source. If I embody all of that, then I will be fixed. Until then, I am a work in progress. You know, he wrote that for our very first film interview. We had a whole film crew on him, lights that were disturbing his ability to read the screen, the whole thing. So that was written 7 years ago. Wow. And again, gosh, I wish I would, I mean, because already then there's this awareness of how much love needs to meet the situation.
Yeah, and on that, I was really struggling recently, and I went up to, I built a stone circle, Dylan, a long time ago. I ran a commune, and we built a stone circle by hand, and it's up on the hill, and it's huge. And I use it as my place to go when I just need guidance. And I went up there really struggling, and I lay down. I always take off my shoes, and I lay down on the grass. And a voice came absolutely outside of me, clear, said, "You have to love yourself, Eleanor." And I've heard the sentiment, you know, like everybody knows, oh, love yourself, you know, but like, so I've heard it before, but it was really like, and I was like, okay, I'm totally down with that, but how do I I don't know how to do that. And then I thought about, you know, the people I love most of them, my children. I thought about the love I have for them, and then try to kind of be like, imagine if I had that for me. Or once am I right in saying, like, once you get to those levels, there's no me or you, it's pure self, right? But I struggle with it, and it leads on to our next question. But just to end this strange anecdote of mine, I was then lying on the bed, and my cat was lying on the bed with me, and I was telling her how beautiful she was and how wise and how much I love her and thank her for looking after me and stuff. And she said to me, imagine I am you. As I was it's just like,
Aw.
Kenny, you are so clever. Okay. So that's how you do it. That is how you do it. I was like,
That
okay.
is. Yes. And
That is how you, that is
it
literally how
truly
you do it.
is. Go to that most innocent place where, whether it's your child or your pet or a flower, and start there. Because like Dylan says, until you are aware that our bodies are ripe with the rivers of stardust, all the bodies, all the bodies, we are all ripe with stardust. So why not love that?
Yeah. And that is undoubtedly my present, the highest in my awareness and consciousness right now. That is my work, is that the deepness of that, not the just like, daily affirmations in the mirror shit, but the act of,
Yeah.
So Dylan, the next question leads on to that. Do people struggling with life contact you for advice?
Yes.
Yeah. Struggle is universal, he says. Illness just strips away the distractions that normally shield us from it. What I offer isn't answers, it's presence, like he said earlier. On a more practical level, I am or hope to be an example of contentment with living. So we're going back to the why we matter. And being alive is the supreme miracle. So I think, when people are coming to him struggling and looking for advice, it's to be able to experience life in the full spectrum of its natural ebb and flow is the greatest gift. Allowing the struggle, knowing that's part of it, knowing that this all of it is part of this supreme miracle of being alive. We are so desirous of one and not the other. Yeah. I'm doing my best to paraphrase for you, Dylan. I hope I'm okay. Somewhere on the soul level, we did have past lives together. In the future life, we'll be like, you said that wrong.
Kimberly! Dylan, tell me, is it true that the evolution of consciousness can only happen collectively?
Yes. I don't even have to look at him to know that answer. As within, so without. We are cells in a larger body. Healing and awakening can only unfold when we recognize our independence. My liberation is bound to yours. So, given the imbalances of our bodies and minds, environment, and economic system, few realize the critical point that all life now faces. Fewer still feel there is anything that they can do about it. But I had found my calling amidst society's metamorphosis. Healing and awakening can only unfold when we recognize our independence.
And this is why when I hear that, and it's so affirming to hear that, and just to circle back to what we were talking about earlier about being able to affect and have change in that sense of feeling overwhelmed by political events and environmental and global, but because we do evolve together, no being is left behind. It's impossible for that to happen. This is my understanding, and this is definitely what I practice every day. Every drop, every moment of lightness adds to it and makes it easier to be found and to brings people along. And that's how I just feel like I add to the ocean. I add to the ocean, and every single drop is of equal value. And so we all do something. That sense that I have that deep in my bones, that sense that we evolution of consciousness is collective. It's impossible. The idea that somebody could be enlightened, but the rest of us are just idiots. This is not.
Yeah. And there's so many ways to protest. I'm seeing a lot of popping up now around how to protest the government we have here and how to work with that. And yes to all of the marching in your streets and all of that, but I don't want to exclude the power of what Dylan is also doing. And I think sometimes we even forget that some are not able to do that, and that doesn't diminish.
Or don't want to, or feel frightened to do it. There's a million reasons why somebody might not want to go out and protest, but exactly what Dylan is doing is absolutely of equal value. It has equal impact. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Oh, I had something else to say then, and it's gone completely out of my mind. It'll come back in about 5 minutes. Wow, but it was about that. It'll come back as I read the next question.
Okay.
So, Dylan, as you know, well, based on what you were talking about earlier in terms of using it's not an allegory of hitchhiking, you really did hitchhike around, and in that were constantly greeted by the kindness of the world and how much it taught you about the world, it being a friendly place, and has made this journey, there you are in the hands of others, less frightening than it would have been if the world was an unfriendly place. So my son is in Armenia, and he is going to travel back overland from Armenia to England, and he's planning on hitchhiking. Not that I can stop him, but shall I let him?
And you said yes.
Yes.
Which is so cool.
Wow.
I just have to say, Bjorn just popped up, Dylan. This is your friend Bjorn, and the only reason why I know that is because he emailed me about a month ago trying to find you. He just popped up and he said, "Hey, it's Bjorn, just another drop in the wave of life." And if I'm correct, I think Bjorn was one of your hitchhiking buddies. So
No way.
Yeah. Okay,
That is
so that was total magic that he literally just
magic.
popped up.
Oh, thanks, Bjorn. Jeez,
Yeah, I have
love
chills
that.
all over.
Oh, me too. Jeez.
Wow.
Oh, I'm seeing
Aw.
angels. 4
Man.
hours.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that was
Dylan.
cool.
If you did that, thanks very much. That was really cool.
So yes,
Okay.
to your son hitchhiking, trust is an offering, not a guarantee. Trusting your son is an offering to both him and to the world, a chance to be trustworthy. So it really is. I love that you define it that way, Dylan. It's a two-way experience for someone to be trusted. He writes also, and I think I want to make sure I'm not being redundant from the opening, but a lot of people join, so they might want to hear this anyway. They didn't hear. One thing I enjoyed about hitchhiking is that it gives someone an opportunity to be kind, reminds us of our humanity. In a way, my life has become one major hitchhiking adventure, floating on the kindness of others. If we all look deep enough, we'll see that we are all dependent on each other to survive. And I think about the famous Einstein quote, Eleanor, where he says that we must answer the question for ourselves, is the universe a friendly place? Our answer to that question provides our most basic orientation to the world. I remember the couple times I've had to go to the emergency department at the hospital in an ambulance. I couldn't bring my communication device because it connects to my wheelchair and they wouldn't allow that in the hospital bed. I had to go into a totally new environment with new people who I can't communicate with beyond a blink for yes and a side to side with my eyes for no. If I believed the universe is an unfriendly place, it would have been a petrifying experience. So.
And I remembered what I'd forgotten and wanted to say, which is that living and believing that the universe is a friendly place is an act of protest.
Yes.
It is an act, that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the impact. And it's also an act of great surrender and beauty and love and all the other wonderful things. But if you're listening and you're out there and you feel overwhelmed, but you don't want to be out on the streets, or you're afraid, and that's okay, and all of those things, believing the universe is a friendly place is an act of protest.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Good. Okay, Dylan. You've been very honest and open in your memoir about your early childhood experiences and the emotional and physical trauma that you experienced. So I wondered if you could tell me, do you recognize ALS as a response to childhood trauma?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as many of us have probably experienced, trauma has shaped me. It taught me how to compartmentalize pain. There are theories that elevated stress hormones that may contribute to diseases like ALS. I can't say for certain, but I honor the connection. As someone who has experienced abuse, I have had the tendency to take on the role of victim. That has been a really important role to let go of, especially in relation to the disease process. I am not a victim of my body. I am not a victim of ALS. I am not a victim of my circumstance. That has been really important for me to be vigilant in rooting out identification as victim and replace it with self-love. Loving that I can decide how I am going to frame my experience. Loving my existence in that it provides me with the lessons I need to get from where I'm going. I decide that it all has a purpose, and by that free will, I can choose to love myself, my life, and my body's disease manifestation. Through that, I find liberation. When I couldn't move my body, I connected with the non-physical aspect of myself, my inner source. This allowed me to unload the things that hid in my basement, things that caused me to feel like I was operating at a deficit, as though I needed to make up for some darkness of character. More and more, I began to feel that I could be whole and content with who I am. And that is when I really started to feel a shift. Yeah. That rooting out the identification as victim and replacing it with self-love, that is some deeply powerful work.
Deeply powerful work.
And like you, and going back to Eleanor, how do we love ourselves? I love that he frames it as loving that he has the free will to make these decisions, to frame his disease process in a certain way. Like maybe even start there, to love that you have the ability to frame your circumstances. Well, that's pretty cool. Because it is. It's a pretty amazing thing about humanity is that we do have that choice.
Yeah, and I think because there's so many areas where we don't have any choice. So identifying where we genuinely do have choice, and it is basically around framing. That's kind of it. It's a huge it because it's literally the frame with which you perceive your life. But that is also it, as far as I understand. That's the only place I have real choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the trouble I have with it is like it's like I've got no, I don't know whether I'm doing it or not. I think that's what it is. It's like I'm not, because it's entirely conceivable that I just don't recognize it because I wasn't taught it.
You mean whether you're loving yourself or not?
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of sit with that as well. I'm kind of curious about that because I can just feel a kind of, what I can often feel is just a kind of silence. But it's not the same as like when I think of my children, and it's just like, it's beyond the universe.
Gosh, that's interesting. So there's a real visceral experience from what you're saying when you think about the love you have for your children, but maybe that it's not as visceral when you're thinking about the love you have for yourself.
Yeah, and actually reading your introduction to the memoir, I was reading it just before we went live, and you talked about this long-running struggle you had with death and standing at the cliff and all the imaginings you'd have about loved ones. And it was meeting Dylan that just kind of, he took you to the cliff gently and said, no, just come on, just kind of look now. Let's just sort of look. And I really related to that. Like whenever I hear somebody talk, I was listening to Clover Stroud being interviewed by Sam Baker today, and she talks about the death of her sister, Nell Gifford. And I was listening to her talk. I could hear the grief in her voice, but the only way I could relate to it was if I imagined that something had happened to one of my children, and that evoked the feelings. And then I was like, okay, now I can relate. Like they are my tap to all the feelings. But outside of them, I think about my family. I have to admit, I think about my own mother. I think about it's just silence.
Mm.
And I'll just sit with that and be curious about it.
Yeah.
And at some point I'll understand it better.
Dylan,
Yeah.
I want to, Vicky, are we good? Or Dylan, are you doing all right? Do you need a clearing or anything?
Yeah, okay. He's doing good.
Okay.
Hey, let's go to chapter 15. I was going to say, let's go to question 15, Dylan. In the early days, did you feel anger and blame?
Yes.
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 I mean, absolutely. We are human after all. In the beginning, I wanted to put my anger somewhere, anywhere outside of myself. It was the dark night of my soul, and maybe a little bit longer than a night. But over time, anger softened into grief, and then the grief softened into something more spacious, which became acceptance. So, yeah. And I think Dylan goes into that in the book also, those early stages. I love how real you are about that period of your life. And I know, I mean, just on the precipice of graduating from 6 years of medical school, a new marriage, a whole career ahead of you, a life of service. Wow. All of that was taken away. So I think anger is an honoring of your life at that point. It wouldn't be anything other than that.
How could it be anything other than that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You talk a lot in the memoir about smoking pot, and in some degrees it's framed as a substance abuse, Dylan. But I wondered if you also benefited from smoking it, or still do ingest it in some way now. Do you also benefit from smoking pot?
He said yes.
Yes. Yeah, there was an interesting, and Vicky, you might be able to clarify some of this too, but I think it was earlier on when Dylan was getting his undergrad at Lewis and Clark College, and it was 9/11 happened, and I was actually at NUNM when that happened. So at the same medical school Dylan was at, but the 9/11 did the same thing for me as it did for him, where all of a sudden I was like, fuck it. I don't want to, I don't know what to do with my life, but I'm out. And I dropped out. And Dylan dropped out of Lewis and Clark because of a similar thing. Am I correct about this, Vicky?
Yeah, he was on a football scholarship, and he was majoring in physics and math, and he was an RA, kind of like a dorm mother, and he had all these jobs because it was a quite expensive school, and he didn't show up for a football game, and we drove there and found him, and he was camping in the woods. He set up a tent. He was like, I'm not going to be an RA, so I don't have room and board. And we just said, just come home. And he's, no, I have to do this. And then he thought about it. And he came home and kind of restructured and got the idea to go to naturopathic college, and worked for a while at a school where he was working in a greenhouse with kids and digging in the dirt. And
So that was interesting. But around that time, he was smoking. The pot was sort of helping with some of the.
The joke was, that a lot of richer kids go to Lewis and Clark, and he just said that some of the kids had $600 drug money coming in a month, because your room and board goes,
Yeah. So, and then I think that Dylan turned towards it and said, I think I need to look at other ways of coping. Eventually.
In Olympia, he went to Evergreen, and he got involved there with counseling and that kind of help.
Yeah.
But it was a crutch for a while. Yeah. I mean, it's a brilliantly useful plant, obviously, but we can everything can get abused, and it can get abused just as much, can't it? So yeah, but it's incredibly useful. It's a great medicine, and I think for at the right moment, we all turn to it.
Yeah.
And on that front, Dylan, have you experimented with psychedelics one step further?
Yes.
Yes. And actually, I want to add to that, Dylan, since your diagnosis with ALS, have you experimented with psychedelics? No.
Okay.
I ask that only because I know that some people have, and not as a healing modality, but as a opening to the next dimension, or opening to the possibility. But you're already doing that probably daily through your meditations and qigong. So he also, continuing on with his yes to experimenting with psychedelics, he said they opened windows in his perception. And they teach me that reality is more flexible, more luminous than I had been taught. And they seeded many of the insights that now ground me.
Yeah. And I would imagine, I mean, my experience, I always felt that psychedelics, they like give me a kind of window view of what's possible, and then now go back and get there through practice and breathing. And do you know what I mean? It's like, and that for me, that's the bit, that's like the beauty of psychedelics, is that they kind of inspire the view, and then now go and do the work to get there yourself.
Yeah.
So I imagine, Dylan, that the work you're doing exactly.
Well, as you said earlier, Eleanor, it's almost like the way that Dylan is speaking in some of these essays, it's like he's already on an acid trip.
Exactly. As we began, literally, exactly. It's psychedelic land.
So maybe I've seen those smoothies that they make for you, Dylan. Maybe there is something in there.
We know what's going on. And on that front, Dylan, do psychedelics have a place in medicine?
Yes, absolutely. He says true healing requires touching realms beyond the rational mind. Amen to that. Psychedelics, when used wisely and ceremonially, can unlock doors conventional medicine doesn't even acknowledge exist. And I think basically, we have this very binary idea of what healing is. And so while psychedelics may not heal the body, there is so many more dimensions of healing that can happen. And so I think psychedelics can really open up that potential.
Yeah, and I think the crucial bit, that medicine doesn't even acknowledge the door is there, let alone that the thing. That's the bit. I mean, I pray as hard as the next person that medicine does get to a point where it's really embracing, again, holding all these realities in one room.
Yeah.
Because wow, imagine our understanding of ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think we're moving in that direction, but boy, oh boy, is it slow. Jeez Louise. Dylan, do you believe it's possible to halt ALS? And do you put energy into that?
Yes. No.
I see no.
Yeah.
So, well, there was two questions there. Let's ask them again. I'm curious.
Okay.
Dylan, do you believe it's possible to halt ALS?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Now, do you put energy into that?
You put energy into it? Yes. I think that was a yes.
Okay. Yeah, even some of his more recent writing, I and then it's always in his voice, which is a little funny and casual, but he's like, I'm still open to a miracle. He says, however, acceptance and hope are not opposites. I work at being at peace with what is, and yet the human spirit naturally reaches toward healing, toward wholeness in every breath. So it's interesting because for him, Dylan, you talked a lot in a podcast episode years ago with Pierre, I remember, he's a Zen monk on the East Coast, and he had a question for you about equanimity, and you said that equanimity is remaining balanced between the cravings for pleasure and repulsion of unpleasant sensations, and in that balance between the poles of craving and repulsion, ability and limitation, I have felt a deep peace. So we are constantly, and so this is maybe an example of why he may not be putting as much energy into the miracle as much as acceptance. He says we are constantly labeling situations good or bad, like we do with sensations, either pleasant or unpleasant. In relation to chronic disease, we can't see the lessons and growth that could come through this experience. For the growth of the soul, the experience with this disease could be exactly what is needed. Don't get me wrong, I am not being fatalistic. When they told me that I was diagnosed with an incurable terminal illness, I tried everything in hopes to finding a cure. The difference is that my relationship to the disease process didn't change. I made my peace with it while I was searching for a cure. And I have made peace with it while I live with it and continue to pray for a miracle.
Yeah. And so again, I mean, that is a perfect example of holding all of those truths in one room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
hi everyone, we're back again. A little technical problem. So the next question is about Jean Gebser, and I'm just going to, for anyone who doesn't know who Jean Gebser is, I'm just going to read just the intro on Wikipedia. This is a philosopher that Dylan, I know you really align with his work, Dylan. So just for people who don't know, Gebser's major thesis was that human consciousness is in transition, and that these transitions are mutations and not continuous. These jumps or transformations involve structural changes in both mind and body. Gebser held that previous consciousness structures continue to operate parallel to the emergent structure. Okay, everyone got that? Homework on my desk. So, question 20, Dylan, for you. When you found Gebser's philosophy, had you already arrived at that thinking?
So Dylan says yes. Much of Gebser's philosophy mirrored what I had already intuited. And I do believe that Gebser came into your life, Dylan, after the ALS had started, correct? Yes. So, and his philosophy, Dylan's, is that consciousness unfolds in great leaps, not gentle slopes like Gebser, and that previous ways of knowing don't disappear but live alongside the new. So,
that's the most fundamentally profound thing about that, actually, is that continuum, living alongside the new. And it just, because I read more deeply into it, and it kind of was, I'd never come across Gebser, so thank you, Dylan, for introducing him to me. I never heard of him, no, nothing, but found that fascinating. And the sudden leaps, and that these levels can be coexisting, and so that it just explains so much about certain groups' behavior, I think, and certain individuals' behavior. I was just like, oh, okay. And again, I think, because I'm always trying to get away from this idea of, someone is more than the other person, someone's better, someone's that kind of gradation. I'm just trying to constantly get away from that and understand that we are all simply trying to live, evolve, be safe, whatever consciousness cycle we're in right at that moment. And that kind of helped, that gave me kind of a philosophical like a bedding to it somehow.
And we're all feeding each other. I mean, I feel being like Dylan, you talk about your vibration, and that vibration that you are elevating in your own life is extending into any life that you touch, whether that's through your book. It's the quantum level, so it doesn't have to be physical contact. And so we are all elevating consciousness together.
And I think, and I certainly feel it now, being around someone whose vibration, or I'm going to use the word of a higher vibration, the practice that is happening, that is creating a very pure and a vibration I can feel, I can almost see, that is again such a gift, and it elevates our own. It teaches mine how to do it. And again, it also within the global capacity that we're in, it's an active protest. It's the most beautiful, brilliant, wild, explicit contribution.
Yeah.
So thank you. And I try and do the same. I try when I sit every morning. I think this is my contribution. The last question is, does Gebser's philosophy sum up your experience?
Yes, it resonates deeply. My body is unraveling, mirrored a larger unfolding of consciousness, both collapse and emergence at once. Gebser's vision gave language to what I was already living. I have always been on a quest to know myself, to become a fully self-realized human being. Although that is fundamentally a spiritual endeavor, since what I am as an eternal being is spirit, and what is eternal is truth. The truth is also, as taught in Chinese medicine, that the macrocosm resides within the microcosm. This helped me to see that the spiritual truth of who I am, what I am, is holographically revealed to me through my body. Heiner Fruhoff, who is the director of the Chinese medicine program at NUNM, he would often say in Qigong classes, I am in the universe and the universe is in me. I believe the universe is interchangeable with spirit. My body is therefore a window into my soul. How great is it to have something tangible to work with, to reach for the stars. So that is the background to my inner dialogue with my body as the sacred temple. I have discussed earlier some of my affirmations to experience the totality of my being through the sensations or symptoms that arise. It is either all divinely rooted or none of it is. I don't believe that I can choose to label one a curse and one a blessing when it is convenient for me. All manifestation is of the source, or none of it is by definition. Yeah.
That is a great teaching.
That is, gosh, Dylan, where in the world? I think that was taken also from the very first interview from 7 years ago. So this just gives you an example. And 7 years ago, Dylan, I was not using his voice to speak, but was also very much using his eyes to write. And so all of this, he would just spill out before we would do these interviews. And so 7 years of living like this. I want to, Eleanor, please develop the device so we can reach inside of your brain, Dylan, and know what you've learned in the last 7 years, because you were already speaking truth. Yeah.
Wild. So we've taken up a lot of your time, Dylan, and I'm really grateful for it. That's the end of the questions. And what we would really love is I'd really love just to sit in silence for a little bit with you and with Kim and with your mum. Just a minute or two. Is that okay? Can we do that?
Yes.
Great. So this is a chance just for everybody who's with us. We're just going to be.
Yeah.
And when we come,
I just wanted to acknowledge how much I appreciate you suggesting this, Eleanor. We've been talking for an hour and a half, and yet the space that you live in is a lot of silence. And so I love that you're honoring the intelligence of that space so that we can meet there instead of just having Dylan, you meet us here. So thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And what I'll do is we'll come out of it and I'm going to read one of Dylan's poems when we come. Okay, let's do it. Atemporal world. Forgiveness lies in the eyes of the beholder. Disappointment is a direct result of expectations. In action and rest, the divine art of purpose. Habits are the forms that hold us. For when the time comes for surrender, who upon do we lean? Living a lie is dying each day. Sure, all life is dying, but the rate of decay is a choice of way. Remember that there is no adventure without the unknown. My story has no end in the atemporal world.
Dylan, hearing your ventilator while we were in silence is a sound that I'm going to remember now. It wove itself into the silence that we were holding, and it just expanded. It felt bigger, and it was like, this is Dylan's breath. And there, I don't want to sound all cheesy or anything, but there was an eternal quality to it. It's like, okay, I know this is a machine, but the presence that you're bringing into this brought that the atemporal world in. So what a gift you are.
Yeah, I the love I could feel in the room.
Yeah. In the glow, because this is people all over the world holding hands in this space together. Thank you, Eleanor, for
Well,
making
thank
this
you.
happen.
Thank you both. Thank you all. Dylan, we're going to let you go. We've had so much of your time. Vicky, thank you so much. Kimberly, thank you.
Thank you.
I love you all. We're going to do some really clever stitching together. I don't know how we're going to do it because...
Oh, easy. Just send me the files.
Okay.
Done.
Okay,
Love
amazing.
you. Love you all.
So amazing. I hope I see you all soon. Bye.
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 Bye.